And I missed the intro video, cutting the intro. All right, and we're back. I thought I had an intro video queued up, and I obviously did not. So welcome to the CIC live stream where we're cutting into cybersecurity, and I will figure out those technical difficulties next time, I promise. We are currently on show 6, so thank you for joining us. I saw one of my buddies already give me a thumbs up. Winston Van Winston. He is the ultimate pugmaster, excellent father, even better coworker. So thank you for joining us, Winston. If you guys are on and you can hear us, please hit that thumbs up button a couple times like so. And yes, I'm spamming the thumbs up button for myself right now. But please do so if you can hear us. We want to jump right in. So for those of you who don't know us personally but are hopping on LinkedIn because you saw us live streaming, I am Joel Bork, and I'm your host here at the Cyber Incision live stream. And I'm joined by Senior Account Executive at Usato, Brandon Krieger. Thanks so much once again for being my co-host, Brandon.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, we have to actually tell people what happened at the start of this. This is kind of the IT. Anyone that's in IT is going to laugh about this because it's always these things that happen right at the start, right? So did you want to tell the story what happened, Joel? Or would you like me to articulate what happened?
You can tell them. Go for it.
Okay, so we all know us IT guys, can be messy, have, applications, documents all over our desktop. Joel being the spring cleaner himself, going kind of, fall, winter, spring cleaning, he ended up deleting all the show backgrounds, overlays, all that, and delete them from his trash. So 10 minutes before the show, what we're doing, we're finding all the images, putting everything in OBS, trying to get everything organized. And Joe was under the understanding, like, we have an hour to go. I'm like, no, we have like 20 minutes. So he's like, oh, I just got to get this set up. There's no problem. Sure enough, all the overlays, all the backgrounds are gone. So if you guys find that funny, just kind of put a comment if you've ever done that yourself. Put a comment in the LinkedIn.
Yeah, I had like 400 items in my downloads on my Mac. I was like, I don't think I need anything from this. Delete it all. Yeah, well, that messed up everything. So with 3 minutes to go, I was scrambling to get Brandon looking as pretty as he does right now. So wave hi, Brandon.
This is a lot of work, a lot of video editing, a lot of lights to make this thing happen.
That is true. All right, so here we go. Brandon, I think you might have been frozen for part of that, so I apologize. I didn't have Zoom pulled up on my computer, so we heard you, but your face was frozen looking in a single direction.
Very curious way. I was actually looking, if you guys know, I'm actually reading the LinkedIn chat and messages on the other side. So
cool. All right. So real quick, Brandon, I think I'm up for the recap this week. So last week we jumped into intellectual property, which included patents, trademarks, licenses, trade secrets, and copyrights. It was the domains, basically 1.4 for the CISSP domains. We also touched on privacy and then the regulations that are in place to ensure the privacy. And then finally, we dove into the type of attacks that are occurring against them. Did I miss anything, Brandon?
No, that was it. And we did a lot of diving over the last 2 episodes into legalities. I mean, that's been very important to know and understand. This week, we're going to get into the ISC Square Code of Ethics, development documentation, implementation, and security policy standards and procedures. And we'll try to make it through to prioritizing.
We won't get there.
I think we get business continuity.
Business continuity and business impact analysis. There's no way we're getting to that today, but we'll try to keep documentation, security policy standards, and procedures fun. Deal?
We'll do it. We'll do what we can, right? Now, I have a question for the community. So we're going to do a little housekeeping. If you guys have any comments, first, like, comment, and share if you can the live stream. We want to get as many CISSPs or CISSPs that are coming up and wanting to be to get out here and just give some insight what they're studying for, some bottlenecks, challenges they're going through. So, and I love to hear from you guys, like the benefits you guys are getting from. There's a lot of guys that keep coming out, and we really appreciate it. I love to kind of hear your benefits and what you're getting from these live sessions. So it helps us kind of give more information and give more value. What do you think, Joel?
No, I agree. I'm going to throw this out on LinkedIn real quick. But the cool part is, like, we got this core group, right? We got Sean. We have a few others. I thank you guys every week for coming back It's a lot of fun having you guys. And then throughout the week, we got a bunch of people watching the recording. So thank you guys for participating, because honestly, you're adding value to those people who are watching it throughout the week. So thank you guys.
Yeah, it's awesome because anytime you guys ask questions or even give comments or feedback, it actually gives more value to their studying, right? And as they're going through it, and it might be a review for CISSPs that are in the industry and maybe work in one specific domain or area to go back through the different areas of the domains.
That's it. Cool.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. So like some of the guys I've talked to, like our VCSOs, sometimes they just certain areas they just don't cover because it's not in their scope. Like they just, the legalities, I'll use that one as an example last week. There's some guys that I've talked to that just, they don't cover it, right? Just not in the scope of the work that they need. A lot of time they're dealing with technologies and roadmaps and plans and, business continuity. And then the legalities are maybe briefly covered.
Well, and 100%, Brandon, you're spot on. I think the other thing is we were looking through this week's content. We're like, man, this is really text heavy. So what Brandon and I spend hours before the show doing is we slice up the text, we make it something that we can digest, and therefore we're hoping you guys can digest as well. So we're pulling bits out that you guys don't need, and then we're putting stuff in that is valuable context. So
we think you don't need, we'll see.
No,
later on, someone will go, I did this test and, that one word you said, they kept asking it all through the test.
No, they won't. They won't.
Harmonization, is that the one you pulled out today?
Yeah. Yeah, it was bad. All right, well, let's jump in, guys. Thank you guys for joining us. We're jumping right into ethics. So this is huge, and it's actually a big part of the exam. And then at the end, you actually have to sign a document saying that you're going to adhere to their code of ethics. So now when we're in security, as security professionals, like we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard of conduct because of the sensitive positions and trust that people put on us. Really, there's two code of ethics in the following sections. And now you got to remember, these rules are not laws, but they're the minimum standard for professional behavior. Now, they should provide you with a basis for sound and ethical judgment. Now, while we expect all security professionals to abide by these guidelines, sometimes they don't, but it's going to be in the questions of this exam. What path would you take? And you will be provided with a few answers. The most ethical one is always the right answer. Fair?
Fair enough. Now, let me ask you this, and you guys as well, why follow ethics? Like, what is it? Like, what is it for us? Why should us, the security professionals, should we follow ethics? What do you think, Joel?
Yeah, well, we were talking about this today and like how I upset some people because I follow ethics and I'm going to tell the truth. Now I'll put a little salt and pepper on it and make it taste good so it goes down easy for people. But I'm going to be honest when they ask me a question, right? So I think as security professionals, it's important to be ethical, right? For the trust put in us, but it's going to overflow into, your work-life balance as well, into your professional relationships, your personal relationships. And it just is it's a healthy way of living, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Sean, who else do we have here on the chat? Guys watching, comment, like, what do you guys think about the actual ethics component? I think it's important, and for me, so, being raised in martial arts and kind of your word is your bond and what you do, builds up a sense of rapport, right? Relationship and, trust in that sense. If you are ethical in your business practices and what you're doing, people trust you more, right? And then if you're doing, sometimes ethics can be the hard thing to do, right? We talked about this a few weeks back. And we were talking about downloading, right? Ethically, as security professionals, we shouldn't be downloading. We shouldn't be, taking information that's not ours, and that's kind of our code of ethics. And depending if you do it or not, that's up to you. But we kind of have that ethics that as security professionals, we should pay for software. We should pay for this. We shouldn't, pirate anything along that line. And you kind of look at that as IT professionals. And don't get me wrong, I'm no saint. When I first got in IT, every software I got, I had some pirated key, like you name it. And I was using everything, testing it, playing with it, because I didn't want to pay hundreds of dollars for software at that time. Right now we have the Apple model where things are like $4 or $5, but at that time,
what is the software that you started paying for that was hundreds of dollars? What was the key that you first bought that kind of flipped the switch to saying, okay, I should buy these keys. I should not.
It was training.
It was training.
It was actually, it was Microsoft training. I eventually bit the bucket, stop downloading, cheat sheets and all that, and pirated videos. It was CBT Nuggets. I'm going to give them a little bit of a plug, but with CBT Nuggets, I actually bought their CDs. That was the first software I was like, you know what? I got to actually start buying it. Got to be a little bit ethical and buy their program. And it was it was DVDs at that time. So, the old style, you had to get, wait for the mail to come and be able to watch it. Anyone that's young here, there these circular discs that you put in your computer, right? You're not downloading, streaming like Netflix, like that. But what happened was that was, I think, the first software kind of application I actually bought. What about yourself? Did you pirate a lot of software starting out?
I was a huge LimeWire fan back in the day, so I had a pretty good collection. But this was back in the iPod, like spinning circle iPod days, right? So,
right.
When it came to getting a clearance, et cetera, like it didn't affect me. But I'm gonna say one of the first things when I was getting into InfoSec was definitely Burp Suite Pro. Like, pay your $300. These are security professionals building a platform that is quick, it's efficient, it's the best in its class. Like, pay them the money that they deserve, because they're providing you with excellent quality piece of software, right? And that's just ethics. Like, yes, there are keys online you could buy for cheaper, people sharing their keys, but don't do it. Like, these guys earn it, they deserve it, right? And it's just good ethics all the way around.
Right. Now, before we move on, through your, you actually did security clearance. Was a lot of these security or ethical questions on the background?
I mean, they do. I mean, it's illegal, right, to pirate software. So it is one of the questions they ask you on your, whatever the document's called that you got to fill out. So,
right.
Yep. Cool.
Awesome. So I love to hear, just kind of going to the group. You got Sean told certainly that with all of the information assets that we have access to and the people that we have to provide information to. So talking about that. No, good.
And then I was making fun of you.
You're making fun of me? The Canadian accent?
No, I said bit the bucket. Is that a Canadian thing? Here in the States, we say bite the bullet. I don't know what you guys say in Canada, but must be bite the bucket. I don't know.
It could be. Something about Tim Hortons or hockey, right?
That's right. All right. Well, cool. Let's jump in. So
let's jump into this. So the governing body that administrates the CISSP certification, you guys all know, is the International Information System Security Certification Consortium, the ISC squared. The ISC squared Code of Ethics was developed to provide the basis of CISSP behavior. Is a simple code with a preamble for 4 canons. All CISSP candidates should be familiar with the entire Code of Ethics, because they have to sign, you were talking about the agreement they will adhere to this code. And then it goes through the Code of Ethics.
That's it. Yeah. So really ISC squared, what you're going to be quizzed on, the preamble and 4 ethics canons. So we're going to jump into those for you. The Code of Ethics preamble is as follows: the safety and welfare of society and the common good, duty to our principles and to each other requires that we adhere and be seen to adhere to the highest ethical standards of behavior. So the preamble is really saying we will adhere to the highest ethical standards. Therefore, strict adherence to this code is a condition of your certification. So if you want to have the CISSP, you have to adhere to this code. And let's jump right into the canons. Brandon, you're up with the first one.
Protect society, the common good, necessary public trust and confidence in the infrastructure. Security professionals have great social responsibility. We are charged with the burden of ensuring that our actions benefit the common good. It almost sounds like, like a superhero.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
With much power comes
great responsibility.
That's awesome. All right, number 2, act honorably, honestly, justly, responsibly, and legally. Right? Some of this stuff is just common sense, but it's canon number 2. So integrity is essential to conduct to the conduct of our duties. We cannot carry out our duties effectively if others within our organization, the security community, or the general public have doubts about the accuracy of the guidance we provide or the motives behind our actions. Man, it's true. What if you're recommending a product, right? And then it turns out, well, I just saw one that there was an anti-fraud company and the CEO just got convicted of fraud. Go figure, wow. Right?
Right.
But like immediately, all ethics, all credibility out the window, right?
Yeah.
With one action, potentially. Or sounds like it was more than one, but we'll move on. What's
right.
number 3?
So provide diligence and competent service to principals, so your clients and people that you work with. Although we have responsibility to society as a whole, we also have this specific responsibilities to those who have hired us to protect their infrastructure. We must ensure that we are in a position to provide unbiased, competent service to our organization. So I have a quick question about that. Unbiased. What if you're selling a service? What if you're a value added reseller? You could be biased.
Yeah, but it's important to, like, when it comes back to sales, right? Because you're coming from the sales perspective, and I.
Put in my sales hat on right now, right?
Yeah.
So talking about that, like if I have,
how do you do what's in the best interest of the customer and not just the best interests of your wallet?
Exactly, your quotas, right? And the company I work for now, which is great, it's all our services, but companies I've worked for before, we were value-added resellers. So whoever had the biggest price point, right, and that you're going to make the most amount of profit, a lot of times you started to kind of have those discussions around that product for that month. If you were going to get a better deal, make more money off that sale, is that bias, right? And I would say, me morally, that is, like, if they can go for the same or a quality product, right, and maybe you're not making as much profit from it, but you're going to go with another company and you're going to make 40 points or 60 points from it, the sale, where are you going? So I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. Have you guys ever been in a situation where it was really unbiased, or it was biased and you had to make a decision? Let's see what these guys say.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Winston too, if he's still on. Love that guy, super ethical, but that man can sell some product if I've ever seen it. So number 4, advance and protect the profession. So our chosen profession changes on a continuous basis, right? Nobody can argue that one. And as security professionals, we must ensure that our knowledge remains current and that we contribute our own knowledge to the community. So let's recap. Protect society, act honorably, provide competent services with your principles, and advance and protect the profession, right? And if it comes back to it, this should be the mission, vision, and values for every cybersecurity company in the U.S. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Or it should
totally
be
agree.
entangled with it, right?
Now, one thing I want to add here too, and I know I got caught up in a question when I was going through some of the practice tests, human life takes precedent. So anytime you get caught and there's an ethical question about that, and they're talking about security and where you respond first, just to let you know, some of them will be a little bit tricky, and there might be a human element in that human life always comes first, right, for protection. So just to kind of let you guys know, as I've been going through some practice tests now.
Yeah, good stuff. I threw that in the chat because that's really important, right? If there's ever a question, whether it's human life or something else, human life first.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that was really the ethics section. So that was the preamble. That was the 4 canons that you'll be quizzed on. We're going to touch a little bit more on ethics in the internet, 10 commandments of computer ethics. So it's kind of like me beating you over the head with this Bible. And then we will jump into a few exam essentials. So we're going to jump into a few things. It's a little bit of recap and a little bit of new stuff. Cool?
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
Let's do it. So back in 1989, the Internet Advisory Board basically recognized the internet was growing too fast. They couldn't control it, and it had grown beyond the initial trusted community. So the Internet Advisory Board, they issued a statement, and the statement of policy was titled Ethics in the Internet. The statement is a brief list of practices that are considered unethical. So once again, it's the name of the title is Ethics and the Internet, but it basically just goes into the unethical stuff. So we talked about the ethics. Let's go into the unethical stuff. Brandon, you're up first with number 1.
So first one, is seek to gain unauthorized access to the resources of the internet.
Don't do it. Number 2, disrupts the intended use of the internet. So DDoS, etc.
Waste resources, people, capacity, computers through such actions.
Destroys the integrity of computer-based information, right? So this comes back to your CIA triad.
Yep. And then there's this, compromises the privacy of users.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they add that the privacy of users and systems now.
Potentially.
Right.
But I think, once again, it's important to remember that ethics in the internet, it's telling you the unethical stuff, right?
Right.
And it comes back to really, once again, disrupting use, wasting resources, destroying integrity, compromising of privacy of users and systems. I'm going to throw that in there.
There you go.
Cool. Now let's rock through the 10 commandments of computer ethics real quick. The Computer Ethics Institute created its own code, right? This is the 10 commandments of computer ethics, and it starts with thou shall not use a computer to harm other people.
And then the next one is thou shall not interfere with other people's computer work. Now, hold on a second here. I got a question about that.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's fun. Like I worked at a help desk and some people would not leave their passwords or leave their computers unlocked. And sometimes it's just fun to just mess with them.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's really interfering as much as it's teaching.
Oh,
them
it was
a good
interfering.
Lesson. No, was it?
It was interfering. Okay. Oh yeah. It took them half an hour to an hour to fix the desktop after we were done. But we changed all the icons so they'd open up all different applications. So we couldn't get everything opened up, but we were messing with that. But it's a little fun, right?
Well, we used to send whatever your last email is. We'd reply all and send a picture of a unicorn to everybody if you left your computer unlocked.
Nice.
I don't know. See, yeah, so that's a toughie. But number 3 is thou shalt not snoop in on other people's computer files, and it sounds like that's where you guys were going with it.
Oh yeah, we went deep. We changed the executables. We changed everything. This guy couldn't open up any application. Didn't know what was tied to what. It was fun.
Ashamed.
It was fun watching them, but he never left his computer unlocked again.
That I believe.
Thou shalt not use a computer to steal.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep. Thou shalt not use a computer to bear false witness.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm actually thinking now religion as we're reading these now. False witness. I've heard that in a Catholic terms and things along that line. Thou shalt not copy proprietary software which you have not paid. Funny, we just talked about that.
Yep. Thou shalt not use other people's computer resources without authorization or proper compensation, right? So it's funny because I'm thinking about the different attacks, right? This is like crypto mining, right? Where you've implanted a extension or something that's mining crypto in the background using someone else's resources without authorization, right?
Yep, for sure. Thou shalt not appropriate other people's intellectual output. Interesting. Okay. So now I wonder how that works with social media.
Oh, Shelton says it's messed up. which part, Shelton? Talk to me, buddy. What part's messed up? I gotta know.
Probably like all of it.
All of it, right? Linking this to hey, this is in your study book for CISSP. So, thou shalt think about the social consequences of the program you are writing or the system you are designing. So,
interesting.
Yeah,
so how's your coding?
Right. So there was an interesting one that I read that. I'm going to try to keep this very unpolitical, but somebody basically created something where it was sucking up their social media posts and then basically providing it to the internet and showing which people provided it along with their information. And It could have been like a doxing situation where, you're basically exposing people's PII. They ended up not releasing it, but yeah, think about the social consequences before you release your software.
Right. No, true. Thou shalt always use a computer in a ways that ensures consideration and respect for your fellow humans.
I can think of a bunch of forums right now where that has never happened, but we'll move on.
I could think of any forum where you have keyboard warriors. Does that not work?
Oh man. So right, but I mean, there's never a better time to change your online behavior than now. So as we go towards this exam. The time.
And I think this is the ethics for us. We're not kind of putting it to the keyboard warriors that are back there and, all upset of whatever's going on, right? On Twitter, whatever that may be. This is kind of for us, for CISSPs, because different standard.
That's it. Well, and also Shelton, welcome. Shelton is a gentleman who I've been speaking with over the last few weeks. He's currently a city carrier at the U.S. Postal Service, and he's looking to get into cybersecurity. So he's got a couple good certs. He's going to school and finishing up his degree, and he's looking to make the transition over. And I'm telling him to apply now. So welcome, Shelton.
Nice.
I look forward to watching your journey, man. It's only up from here.
Yeah, and it's such a big industry, right? When it comes to cybersecurity.
It doesn't feel like that when you're trying to get into it, though, does it?
Oh, man. It's when I first tried to get in it, like 5 years ago, when I finally started to break into the industry, it was daunting. Like, do you start to learn scripting and programming? Do you learn penetration testing? Do you learn, hacking? Do you learn this? Do you learn that? Do you learn sales? Like, it's just, okay, I can't learn it all. Like, what do I do? I'm just going to sit in the corner and just kind of rock back and forth, right?
Don't do that. Shelton, don't listen to that.
But I mean, for Sheldon's advice, pick something you like. I mean, that's always the recommendation when someone asks me about breaking in the industry. First, kind of look at like taking, I don't know if he has it. Does he have a Security Plus?
Yeah, so he does, and he's looking. So it was cool because we got to sit down and be like, okay, well, what are your priorities? What do you want to do? And he did. He made a decision. He's like, I want to go into defensive cyber first. So like, I want a SOC job. I want to get. So we talked, and I was like, all right, here's a couple things. Hey, jump in, get your Splunk fundamental certification. It's a free exam, right? But having that knowledge about a SIM or SOAR when you're trying to break into the industry, especially on the defensive side, it's going to be key for him. So excited.
Well, the other good thing is a lot of companies right now, to let him know, I know in Canada, but I mean, you can tell me this in the States, some of them will hire like level 1 analysts with only the Security Plus.
I know. You still got to apply, though, to get that job.
Well, I hope he's applying. Come on, Sheldon, you got to get out there. You got to hustle.
He's hustling, man, and he's got a family. So I feel him. But, man, now's the time to grind. All right, cool. Let's jump right in. Go ahead.
Final exam comment? Essentials.
Exam essentials. Yep, we're there. So you got to know the definition of computer crime, right? It's a crime or violation of the law that's directed against or directly involves a computer. What's up next?
Yeah, be able to list and explain the 6 categories of computer crime. Computer crime are grouped into 6 categories: military and intelligence attacks, business attacks, financial attacks, terrorist attacks, grudge attacks, and thrill attacks. Be able to explain the motive of each type of attack. Interesting.
Thrill attack. I don't know if I've ever heard of a thrill computer attack before. It's just for the high of getting into a system. There you go. That's it. All right. Well, there are your 6 categories. I don't think I could have listed those off just rapid fire if you asked me. So I'm going to hit those again real quick. Military attack, right? Business attack, financial attack, terrorist attack, grudge attack, and thrill attack. All right. Next is know the importance of collecting evidence. As soon as you discover an incident, begin collecting that evidence. The evidence can be used in subsequent legal actions or in finding the identity of the attacker. It can also assist you in determining the extent of the damage. So collect it, preserve it, maintain a chain of custody of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And as we go through, there's areas that we're talking about like forensics and in that area, and just make sure you kind of know that inside out, because it's important not only for the exam, but even real world, right? Especially with all the breaches and compromises that are going on. So important to know.
100%.
So the next one is understanding the e-discovery process. Organizations that believe they will be targeted of a lawsuit have a duty to preserve digital evidence in a process known as electronic discovery or e-discovery. The e-discovery process includes information governance, identification, preservation, collection, processing, review, analysis, production, and presentation activities.
That's loaded.
So that's a lot, to do. And then just being able to, again, like you're doing, go over it, list that is again. So there's so many to do. Like the e-discovery process, again, includes the governance, identification, preservation, collection, process, review, analysis, production, and presentation of activities.
Yep. So next one is this, I did a forensics a while back, and I love this part, but know how to investigate intrusions and how to gather the sufficient information from the equipment, software, data. Now, this is key, and when you get into Blue Team, you have to practice, right? And it's so fun because my company has taken a stance and said, look, we will be doing tabletop exercises. That's the best way to do it. Have somebody else, have a third party come in, set up a tabletop exercise, run it, and see how you score, see how you investigate, see how you gather the data, the evidence. Make sure you can not just do it, but you have practice, and then the people around you can also do it. Because what if you're out that day, right? So it's not just about us.
Now, when you did that, did you get a scorecard?
Yeah, I mean, they did. They had a checklist. They had their entire activities. What things were we able to detect? Were we able to remediate? Were we able to stop mid intrusion? Right. So every time it was interesting. Our company actually did a pandemic scenario a year before, and we executed on that plan.
So I have a question for the group and guys that are watching this. How many guys go through a tabletop exercise per year, per quarter? Like, what's your cadence for that? Like for your company, Joel, do you guys go through that like on a frequent basis?
Yeah, so they do tabletop exercises. Right now with COVID, we're not, but we're currently in a pandemic. So we did it the prior year, and it was on a pandemic. Like, what are the chances a ridiculous amount, because even Disney said, look, we prepared for everything except a pandemic.
Right.
So, but you got to prepare. You have to think of alternate situations that your organization could get into and prepare for it.
Exactly. And just kind of go through it, and then you see kind of where your gaps are.
Yeah. So what are the alternatives to confiscating evidence?
So knowing the 3 basic alternatives for confiscating evidence and when each one is appropriate. First, the person who owns the evidence could voluntarily surrender it. Second, a subpoena could be used to compel the subject to surrender the evidence. And third, a search warrant is most useful when you need to confiscate evidence without giving the subject an opportunity to alter it.
Yeah, right. So you see cops busting down the door with their search warrant.
This is actually pretty prevalent because I actually have a colleague, a friend of mine that I worked with. His daughter was going through a huge cybersecurity compromise from someone online, and they had to wait for a warrant. They had to wait for all that to be able to, execute the warrant, collect his information, collect his computers and all that. So it's pretty prevalent right now.
Yep, it really is. And then once you have it, know the importance of retaining the data, right? So what are the log files? How long are they retained for? Is it for a reasonable amount of time? And a lot of this you're going to run into, guys, with like SOC 2 audits. You're going to run into a lot of these. How long are you retaining files? Is that appropriate? How long is your physical security cam logs retained? But know the importance of that, right? If it's not for a long enough period of time and you can't retrieve it, there's less and less value to it.
So the next one is know the basic requirements for evidence to be admissible in a court of law, right? So timelines, right? It's very important. To be admissible, evidence must be relevant to a fact, an issue in the case. The fact must be material to the case, and the evidence must be competent and legally collected.
So this was a lot of review from the last few sessions, guys, and this was a really good recap. So show 6, this recapped a lot of good exam content. One more from previous ones, and then we've caught up to where we are today. But you have to be able to explain the various types of evidence that may be used in a criminal or civil trial. So real evidence consists of the actual objects. So a knife, a lighter, right? If you set a computer on fire or a building on fire, it's the physical evidence. So real evidence is the actual object. Documentary evidence consists of written documents that provide insight into the facts. And then testimonial evidence consists of verbal or written statements made by witnesses.
For sure. And then understanding the importance of ethics to security personnel. Security practitioners are granted a very high level of authority and responsibility to execute their job functions. The potential for abuse exists, and without strict code of personal behavior, security practitioners could be regarded as having unchecked power. Adherence to the code of ethics helps to ensure that such power is not abused.
Yeah, agreed.
And it goes back to Spider-Man.
That's it. But there's always that one guy who's got super admin on almost everything. And if he doesn't adhere to a code of ethics, could be bad news. So it's important.
Well, I've heard horror stories like that. I've heard a lot of things like that. I don't know about you, like where some people have hold companies hostage, right? In the sense of, I want to raise, if you don't, you're not going to get access to your systems, or I'm just going to leave. And now you're kind of screwed because they have everything under the sun, all God codes, we'll call it, for the company, right? Server access, email exchange, whatever that may be. And if they leave, now the company's, running around scared now. Like, what do we do?
Could you imagine somebody holding your company ransom for a raise? Like, guarantee you, yep, I'll give you the raise, and tomorrow you'll be getting arrested and walked out the doors. But yeah, I mean, it's, but that's where it comes down to this next domain. So guys, we're transitioning now from domain 1.5 of the study exam into 1.6. And this is where you develop, document, and implement security policies, standard procedures, and guidelines. We're going to dig into each of those 3, and that will help you provide least privilege, right? It'll help you add the correct security mechanisms and controls in place so that you don't have that happen, along with all kinds of situations. So you ready, Brandon?
I'm ready. So one question just to check in, is everyone still with us?
Give us some claps. Celebrate a little if you're still awake and we didn't put you to sleep yet.
There we go.
Just give me some action hands. There. Yep. Give me some claps all the way around. Sean, thank you for being here. Shelton, thank you for joining us, buddy. We also had Christopher Clayton, buddy. Thanks for joining us again this week. Winston Van Winston, you rock. Thanks for joining us. Brandon Krieger, that is my co-host. Thanks for clapping for me.
Oh, there you go, Joe.
All right, cool. So for most organizations, maintaining security is an essential part of ongoing business, right?
Right.
Okay.
If their security was seriously compromised, many organizations would fail.
Yeah, right. Exfilling your trade secrets, your proprietary information. So to reduce the likelihood of this security failure, the process of implementing security has been formalized, right? There's a hierarchical organization of documentation that's required.
And each level focuses on a specific type or category of information issues, starting with our favorite, security policies.
That's it. Now, guys, we're going to go through that hierarchical process today. We're going to end with it as well. It starts with policies. It goes into standards and baseline, goes into guidelines, and then it goes into procedures, which is the core. It's the action occurring. So we're going to start with policies. And let me scroll back up here real quick. And let's get into it. So security policies, top tier security policies. A security policy is the document that defines the scope of security needed by the organization. It talks about the assets, talks about the required protections, and the extent of which the security solution should go.
Exactly. And it defines the main security objectives and outlines the security framework of an organization. So very important. And there's a lot of frameworks that you guys can go online and check out different frameworks you can use as templates too.
Yep, that's it. Now, I do have to give a quick shout out. I got some claps from a gentleman named Eric Black on here. This guy's doing something known as the Rock Cast. So he brought like the drummer of Korn onto his podcast. He does it. I'm trying to get him to live stream on LinkedIn someday. So we'll get him here. But Eric, thanks for joining us, buddy. I appreciate you. He also designed this logo below for Cyber Incision. So he does some great work and video edits as well. So Eric Black,
that's
you
awesome.
rock, buddy. Yep. So back to the security policy. So this security policy should clearly define why security is important and what assets are valuable, right? So it comes back to the assets portion. This is a strategic plan for then implementing your policy as well.
Right. Then you have the document discusses the importance of security to every aspect of daily business operation and the importance of the support of the senior staff for implementation of the security. So it gives them actually direction of what they need to implement.
That's it. Now, so we've talked about the security policy has to talk about assets. It has to go into the daily business operations. It also has to be used to assign responsibilities. But these responsibilities, like you're not going to name somebody. In my security policy, I'm not going to say Brandon Krieger is responsible for this. You have to tie the responsibility to a role, right? So this role will be responsible for this, this, and this, and that will indicate the compliance, right? And define the levels of risk involved.
So now let me ask you this, Joel, since that's been asked or at least, brought up, why do you define the role versus the individual?
Well, think about it. Let's say you have a couple people. Let's say you have an admin who takes this, he's your super admin on everything. He's the man, and you give him the responsibility, and then he does something unethical, and you have to let him go. Now what?
Right.
That just the security policy is trash, right? Because it labels one person as responsible for that specific requirement, where you should label his role. So then when you replace him, you can brief that individual on the requirements he'll have, and he'll be responsible for maintaining.
Perfect. And I think that's very important to think about as you're writing your own policies and kind of doing that, where it's role based, because that role can be now, as you grow to and scale, there can be many people doing that role, right?
Absolutely. You
could have many security managers, right? Security directors, right? Depending how big your organization is, right?
Absolutely.
So, even then you look at, I'm just thinking out loud, like security analysts, right? We're talking about SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, right? Levels 1, level 2. There could be many of them have certain responsibilities and roles that are needed for part of the security policy.
Absolutely. Now, I do have to give a shout out. We had a couple ladies jump on with us, Christine and Salome. Looks like we have junior cyber analyst from San Francisco, and then also assessment and authorization analysts. I'm not seeing CISSP behind either of their names, so welcome, ladies. We're always happy to have powerful women in cybersecurity on this. We are helping people study for the CISSP exam, so you're more than welcome to join us Tuesday nights at 7. Awesome. Cool. So now we are going to be jumping into the specific portions.
This document.
Right. So this document, what are the pieces, right? So the first is going to be the organizational security policy. And this is going to focus on the issues relevant to every aspect of the organization.
Right. And just kind of recap and go back a little bit. This document is often used as a proof that senior management has exercised due care in protecting itself against intrusion, attack, and disaster. Right. Security policies and compulsory required by rule, law, obligation, and therefore ethics. So that's why this document's so important. It has so much weight to it.
Well, and we talked about it in previous episodes, right? That if you don't provide due care and due diligence, that could be held against you in a court of law if there were a breach or an incident, right? So as a senior security professional,
negligence, right?
Negligence is key, right? So it's extremely important to have these security policies in place. So
exactly.
So that was an organizational security policy. You're up on the issue-specific security policy.
Right, which is focused on specific network service, department, functions, or other aspects that is distinct from an organization as a whole. Sorry. So again, let me say that aspect that is distinct from the organization as a whole.
Yeah. So really, we're talking about an organizational security policy. Then we have an issue-specific security policy, and then we have a system-specific security policy. Tongue twister, right? But it kind of breaks it down. So this is the top part of our hierarchy, and it has multiple subsets. And then obviously a security policy for a system focuses on an individual type of system, potentially something like a core system that is holding proprietary information, trade secrets, something that has approved software. It could outline the methods for locking that down, or even mandating a firewall or other security controls for it.
Which is kind of important because when you're looking at, playbooks and things like that, how things are supposed to be managed, this is where you kind of put those in there, right? Under the system specific security policies is how things are supposed to run. And it's great because as Sheldon, is that the Sheldon? Yeah. As he's starting to go through, these are great to know as he's starting to learn of how systems are. This is what he's going to be trained on how these systems work.
100%. It will. And right. As a junior SOC analyst, you're going to be taught how to implement the procedures from these policies, right? So that's going to be key. Now, when you're talking about those, you have those security policies. Well, there's three categories that those security policies could fall into. It's going to be regulatory, advisory, and then informative. So the regulatory policy is required whenever an industry or legal standard is applicable, right? So regulatory, think legal. This policy discusses the regulations that have to be followed and then the procedures that go along with it.
Right. And then we have the advisory policy discusses behaviors and activities that are acceptable and defines consequences of violation. It explains senior management's desire for security, compliance within an organization. Most policies are advisory.
Right. So telling the employees, telling the people within your organization how to go about certain behaviors and actions, right?
So let's check in with everyone. How's everyone doing with the information? Advisory policy. We're downloading a lot of content here, a lot of material. Check in, guys. Let us know how you're doing. If you have any questions, comment in the actual message or in the comment box. We're actually watching it. I know it's a lot of technical information, a lot of policies, procedures, and a lot to take in.
Well, and if you've written a policy that was more effective than something else, tell us about it, right? I want to know, okay, yes, we all have regulatory policy, whether it's a GDPR policy, every company and their mother has one of those now, but the advisory policies, have you written one? Have you worked with your GRPC team before? And then have you gotten into something like an informative policy? Now, this is a policy designed to provide information or knowledge about a specific subject, such as company goals, mission statements, or how an organization interacts with its partners. So that's an interesting one. I'm going to think, I don't know if we have a policy about our mission, vision, and values. Does Usato, Brandon?
Yeah, we have a policy for that. Our values. Yeah.
I'm going to have to go back through. I know we put it at the front of our policy handbook. Does that count? Potentially.
It could be one line. I mean, it could be part of that.
It could be.
As long as it's detailed and it's informative, I think that's what's the criteria, right?
Yeah, well, that leads you into your next point, right?
Which are policies broad and overviews, right? Yeah. So it can be and I know when I was working in the marketing industry marketing, a lot of times when people were doing business plans and kind of doing all their policies and procedures, sometimes they were just short because they were smaller companies. There wasn't much to write.
And that's okay. And as the company grows, right, these policies are supposed to be kind of living and breathing within the organization. Now, are they always? No. But as your organization grows and changes and the systems evolve, these policies should as well. So
it's important to know that.
Absolutely. So policies are supposed to be broad overviews. But we're going to talk about standards, baselines, guidelines, and procedures. Those are more specific. This is detailed information on the actual solutions that you're going to be implementing. So policies, more high level, and then we get into standards, baselines, guidelines. It's going to get much more granular.
That's right. So it's so important. The things that to remember is the standards are the next level below security policies.
Right. So remember our hierarchy, right? You have policies, you have standards and baseline, then you have guidelines, then you have procedures.
So the next one's security policies, right? And in individuals.
That's it. So as a rule of thumb, security policies should not address specific individuals, right? So we talked about this a little before. You want to address the role instead, right?
That's right. And so instead of assigning task and responsibility to a person, the policy should define task and responsibility, like you said, and you mentioned, to fit a role.
Yeah. So let's jump down to acceptable use policy, right? Because we kind of touched on that, the individuals part already.
Yeah. So acceptable use policy is a commonly produced document that exists as part of the overall security documentation infrastructure. And to go a little bit of detail in this, it's so important, especially with the pandemic, that people take a look at it now.
Why?
Well, think about, like, everyone's changing, right? Like, all your remote users now, right? And how are they supposed to use their systems? How are they supposed to use VPN? How are they supposed to connect to the network? At what sites are they allowed and they're supposed to go to? Because now they're at home. Are they supposed to be watching Netflix and streaming, right, off their work computer because now they're at home? So going back through your acceptable use policy.
Well, let me ask everybody on here a question. Looks like we have still a few people who are awake and alive with us. Thank you guys for sticking on. Now that everybody's working remote, what is your VPN policy? Can anybody sum it up in like a sentence? Like, Brandon, type in the chat real quick. Do you know your VPN policy?
Actually, we have a VPN policy. We don't at the moment because a lot of our stuff is not online. So right? A lot of our documents, a lot of our stuff is local to a secure desktop or secure laptop.
There you go.
So we don't need to log in. We have secure, like, SSL and secure authentication to emails and servers and stuff like that. But for VPN, most of the stuff is secure locally.
That's pretty good. Our policy, you got to think from an internal monitoring perspective, like a lot of your endpoint security, it's updated when you connect via VPN.
Right.
So, when you look at it, like, what percentage of employees are signing into your VPN every single day? It's not as many as you'd hope, right? So you need to be able to dial in. So this COVID thing has been a rude awakening for people, especially when it comes to remote workers. Like, whoa, maybe we're not using the right solutions. Maybe our solutions can't stand up to the policies we've put in place, in which case we need to reevaluate.
Right. And that's why I was saying, just as a reminder, everyone that's watching this, if you have policies and you're managing the acceptable use policy, take a look at it. If you work for a company, just kind of give them a reminder, take a look at it.
That's it. So now, once the main security policies are set, Brandon, it sounds like the remaining security documentation has to be crafted under the guidance of those policies, right? And that's where it comes to standards. So standards define requirements for the use of hardware, software, technology, and security controls. So you have the policy, then you have your standards.
Mm-hmm. And then they provide a course of action by which technology and procedures are implemented throughout an organization.
Right. So these are more tactical documents that define the steps or methods, right? So you have the policy saying, hey, here's our overarching goal. Then you have the standards that are saying, hey, these are the methods you're going to take. These are the standards you have to use. Now, at the next level are baselines. And the baselines define the minimum level of security, right? So standards and baselines are pretty much the second tier. You have policies, standards, baselines. So you have standards. These are the methods you're going to take. And then here's the minimum viable product, the minimum viable security standard you can have for this system throughout the organization.
Now, I have a question for you, Joel. I mean, you work with a lot of different organizations.
Yeah. How
many companies do you think follow even just the baseline?
They have to, because they're updating their baseline regularly. Right? This is something where you have to remember, like, as we move into a containerized world, these images have baselines and golden images. So when you're evaluating your golden image, a lot of the times you're evaluating it in dev, but also you're taking a peek at what's in prod, right? So maybe I kind of digress a little bit, but I see a lot of people living up to the baseline. The problem is moving that next step.
So, and the reason why I asked that, and I'm not picking on any company here, but I'm still, when it comes to the security posture and maturity level, there's still some companies that don't have a full security maturity program, right? And their baseline sometimes is zero, right? So even if the minimum of what they're supposed to be doing, like as an industry standard, they might not be meeting that. So you look at frameworks and things along that line that say, okay, if you run this type of company, you should have this, baseline. I'm still finding companies you're going into and we're having discussions where it's like, yeah, we don't even have that type of process in place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about baselines, right? So one of those baselines is an industry and government standard is NIST. Mm-hmm. Well, and so it was interesting. We had a few doctors, and Dr. Tony, right? You remember Dr. Tony?
Yeah.
Her dissertation was on organizations using, implementing, and adhering to NIST, the NIST framework.
Right.
And she talked about people who would rather just not even know about the framework because then they'd have to adhere to it and provide due diligence for it. And it's like, oh, that is just, it's like chalk on a chalkboard to a security professional's ears, right?
Right. And I think that's why I brought that up, right? Because a baseline is a more operational focused form of a standard. It takes the goals of a security policy and the requirements of standards and defines them specifically in the baseline of a rule against what is implemented and compared to IT systems, right? So that's why I was bringing that up, because if you're running IT systems, you should have a baseline of your security protocols or, a policy in your policy of what you should be doing to secure those systems. And going in, and I mean, you've kind of heard this or done this, like when you're doing pen tests and vulnerability tests and gap assessments, and you kind of going, there's that gaps here, which maybe shouldn't be. Like you guys should have had this, closed up as just the minimum baseline.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the next element of the formalized security policy is the guideline. Mm-hmm. So policies, standards and baselines, and then guidelines. And this is recommendations for how to implement those standards. Now, the cool part is a lot of those standards, like if we're talking about NIST or ITIL or a number of other, standards and baselines, they actually offer guidelines and recommendations for their own standards. So it's a great place to start, great place to kick off the security infrastructure for your organization. But it also serves as an operational guideline for security professionals and for users alike.
Right. So guidelines are flexible. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah. So they can be customized for each unique system, right? So it's a guideline for an organization, but if they're using the system in a different way, of course it's flexible. So you can jump in and it can be used for the creation of new procedures as well.
Okay. So for example, the state which security mechanisms should be deployed instead of prescribing a specific product control and detailing configuration settings. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So guidelines outline the methodologies, right? They include suggested actions. They're not compulsory, right? So they're not required, but they recommend the methodologies that you could and should use.
Which is good to know. I mean, in the sense of, and I was reading this today when I was going over some of our show notes and studying, where they talk about some of the frameworks that are out there. I think it's Security Information Systems, CIS, I think it is, but I'll find that out. Mm-hmm. When they were talking about was they actually had the frameworks of what you need to do, and they had the baselines and they had the guidelines, and it had all that in it, depending on your industry. So if you're in health, you're in finance, you're in fintech, whatever that may be, they would give you kind of an idea of this is what you should have in your policies.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't want to see healthcares right now.
Well, it's probably real deep.
All right. So last but not least, guys, this is our final subject for today. I want to thank you guys all for hanging in there with us throughout this session. Security procedures. So quick recap. What's at the top of our pyramid, Brandon?
Oh, you're going to make me go third, aren't you?
Come on. You should know this. Policy. Thank you.
Standards and baseline, guidelines, and then procedures.
Procedures is the last element. It's the foundation of this pyramid, right? So procedures are the final element of our formalized security policy structure. Mm-hmm. Basically, a procedure or standard operating procedure is a detailed step-by-step how-to doc. It's going to describe the exact actions required for a specific security control mechanism or solution, right? So it is the foundation. It is the actions. It is the SOC taking action to ensure that the logs are maintained for this period of time.
Right. And then just as a side note here, just if you see it in documentation, they might actually have the acronym SOP, SOP, just so you guys know if you're reading any documents or that and see the acronym SOP. right? And I always know we have so many acronyms in our industry, right? NDA, SOP, this or that, BCP. You know, you're kind of like acronym crazy, but if you come across it and you see it, SOP, then you know it's the standard operating procedure. Now, the procedures help to ensure standardization of security across all systems.
That's it, right? And all too often, it's you have the policies, you have your standards and baselines, you have your guidelines and the procedures, and they're only developed sometimes as like an afterthought, right? At the urging of like your auditor, like, hey, you have to have this policy and procedure in place. But if these documents aren't used and updated, you know, I see a lot of time people hire in people. Those people will write the policy for them, and then they never touch it again. They throw it in a book, slap it together, give it to people when they're hired on, and they never look at it again. If you're not using it as a guide, if you're not using it to structure your business, then you're doing it wrong, right? Without the planning, the design, the structure, the oversight provided by these docs, no environment can remain secure. It's just the reality. If you don't have the docs in place, you won't be able to show that you've done proper due diligence, due care, and it's just not going to end well for you, unfortunately.
Well, and here's the thing too, just to kind of add on, if you guys are going through any changes, these documents should be reviewed through your change management process.
That's true.
I mean, if you're doing all this, you should actually be going through these documents and modifying, updating, because you're making modifications to any of the standards, right? Any of the policies, the procedures, right? You're making, changes. So it needs to be updated to be relevant to what your current environment is.
Yeah. And then the other thing is like what we see a lot of time is like an organization will have a single document and it'll have policies, standards and baselines, procedures and guidelines all in one doc. It's not the way to do it. Split it up. It should be avoided. These structures exist for a reason because each performs differently and has different functions and should be disseminated differently.
Right. No, so true. Now, is there anything else we had to cover, Joel, for this?
I think we're pretty good. We have a couple minutes that we can leave a little early. I want to thank you guys all again. We hit on this. This is the end of show 6. Next week, we're going into planning for business continuity, and that is domain 1.7 of the CISSP study guide.
Now, do you guys have any questions for us? I mean, just want to leave a little bit of room. I know we got another 3 minutes.
Oh.
I know for myself to add to this, guys, thank you so much again for watching this and coming along the journey with us. Let us know too, as we're going through this, if you guys don't have your CISSP, when are you actually scheduling it for yourself? We'd like to know that, just to see when you guys are scheduling. I know Joel and I talked about, I think it was the end of December.
Yeah.
I think that's what our goal date is, to be able to get this all completed, get it under our hats, and then be able to go write it and sit down for a 3-hour exam.
That's it. Right? Well, and here's the thing is like domain 1 is the longest domain. So once we're through this, we're going to be able to knock out a couple domains in one show, I think, Brandon.
For sure. And I think what happens is what we'll do is, as we go through, is we'll do a little bit of a review right as we're going through and recap, just because I know we're downloading a lot of information. So we'll start to summarize and recap as we go back through each domain. And then we might have a few review shows just to kind of make sure everyone's ready, prepared. And I think we've talked about is having future shows. We're actually going to start doing some, some questions, right? Some scenario questions that we'll go through to get you prepared and, what to look for in the questions.
Yep. And we'll also be having guests on here in future episodes as well. So a couple comments. Sean Delane said our endpoint security software patching is cloud-based. I do see that a lot, right? So that's, especially if you have employees working remote, it has to be patched as soon as they connect to the internet, right? It's interesting to see. We see those organizations use DNS tunneling techniques to download their updated signatures. So definitely whitelistable there, but be sure that it is to an approved domain from that security provider if they do have those behaviors.
Yeah, I think now just a quick question, because a more technical question for yourself, Joel.
Yeah.
What if they haven't, they're at their home network? Would the ISP block it?
No. So this is very cloud-based. So you set it up so if you have that endpoint security device on your device, as soon as you touch the internet, basically it reaches out to that cloud security provider and it'll download updated signatures. So no, the ISP won't block it. Even your own IDS, IPS won't block it, because those behaviors, like DNS tunneling behaviors, are actually really difficult to block. So that's what our company, IronNet, is working at addressing, is detecting those behaviors so organizations can act upon them. So no, that's why they use them.
Yeah. Perfect.
Interesting
Good
stuff.
to know.
Cool.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joel. This was awesome. Another great episode. A lot of information. We're going to have to go back and review it.
You got it. And guys, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. We look forward to taking this exam with you and studying as we go. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your Tuesday evening. Signing out.